Good morning, everyone. As I actually don't need this microphone. First of all, if there's anybody here for any reason who thinks that they can remain really silent for about 30 to 35 minutes, I'm going to ask you to please just find the teacher and you can do some other work while everyone else listens to what's going on. Nobody will be penalized for that. But if you're here, 100% silence. Thank you. I spoke to our 8th graders this morning about the very special zchut, but also responsibility that we have. Because we're living in a period where unfortunately there are fewer people to talk to who can tell their story. About 15 of our 8th graders are spending their semester in a program called Names Not Numbers, where they're interviewing survivors of the Shoah, recording those stories and preserving them for the next generation. And our speaker today, aside from all of the other things he's done to make this school happen, has been interviewed in that program. And we've been blessed to hear his story in that context as well. You know, it's hard when a day means so many different things. We're talking about Veterans Day today, tomorrow, and talking about the contribution that people have given to this country to make this country strong and great. And at the same time, it coincides with one of the darkest days in Jewish history, which is so important for us to learn about as well. And as you will hear, Mr. Bravmann, Mr. Ludwig Bravmann, who's going to be speaking to you today, is actually deeply connected to both of these stories and to both of these days. And for you to be able to hear directly from him is something that I know you're going to benefit from. And if that weren't enough, you know, this month, the Chodesh Cheshvan, we focused in this school on the Midah of Hakarat HaTov. Hopefully it doesn't expire at the end of the month. But focusing on Hakarat HaTov, focusing on gratefulness, and to have Mr. and Mrs. Bravmann here, pioneers of this school, who started this school and helped to start the school and built this community to what it is. So aside from the Hakarat HaTov that we have to you for telling your story, we have Hakarat HaTov to you for being able to come out of that story and to build an incredible place of education, of Torah, and of wonderful midot. So it's a very lucky morning that we have, and we're all going to benefit from that opportunity. Mr. Hain is going to introduce the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Krause. What we're going to do now is a very brief history of Kristallnacht. What is it and the historical context? And then we're going to invite Mr. Bravmann over, who witnessed Kristallnacht, to tell us his story. I'll be interviewing him, we'll be asking him questions. And as Rabbi Krause said, this is really a unique opportunity for all of us at this stage. So when we think about Kristallnacht, here's what we're going to do today. We're going to find out, first of all, what came before it, what caused it, what was the trigger of what this night was, what happened on this night, and why is it so significant? Meaning we know that 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust. Why is Kristallnacht such a seminal, such an important event in that history? A little bit of background. So Adolf Hitler came to power in January 1933, actually through the democratic process initially. The Nazi Party never got a majority of the votes, but through all kinds of political machinations, Adolf Hitler was declared Chancellor of Germany. Almost immediately, within a few months, he took full power, and the Nazi Party was the only party that was allowed to exist. And very quickly, the things that he had prophesied, the things that he had written about throughout all the years, started to come into pass through laws and through actions. Already on April 1st, 1933, there was a boycott of all Jewish stores in Germany. And from 1933 all the way through 1939, World War II started in September 1939, all the way through that time there were over 400 laws enacted against Jews at the national level. There were probably thousands more laws enacted against Jews at the local level, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Now, the one you see there in the middle, the Nuremberg laws, that's the most famous one. That's in 1935. Nuremberg was where they enacted laws that took away the citizenship of German Jews. They were no longer considered citizens, and also made it illegal for Jews to marry or have any relations with non-Jews, for Jews to employ a non-Jewish woman under the age of 45 in their house, really to maintain what they considered to be pure Aryan blood. That's considered one of the most seminal of all the laws. Others were the Aryanization laws, which was basically to remove Jews from all forms of civil service and to confiscate their wealth, to get as much wealth as possible. It's hard to read, but this is actually a timeline from 1933 through Kristallnacht. And I'm going to send this really to all of you later, you'll be able to see it, but it gives just a hint as to some of these laws. You couldn't go to cinemas if you were Jewish at one point in 1935. You couldn't go to theaters, swimming pools. Right before Kristallnacht, which is here, November 1938, you already had to mark a J on your passport. You had to change your name. You had to add the name Israel or Sarah to your name. They just wanted to distinguish us from them because they viewed us as subhuman, as somehow less than them. And we'll talk about in a minute how Kristallnacht played a major factor in that. These laws really had a major impact on Germany because it acclimated the Germans to viewing the Jews differently. Germany had a very long history of anti-Semitism, and we'll talk about that specifically when it comes to Würzburg later, which is the town where Mr. Bravmann comes from. But when the Nazis came to power, these laws had a major, major impact and caused emigration of Jews. Jews started to leave already in 1933 and continued throughout. One of the interesting little facts is that in 1936, the Germans hosted the Olympics. That's when, I don't know if you've ever seen it, Jesse Owens, right?
Yep.
Jesse Owens did incredibly well to the consternation of Adolf Hitler. Jesse Owens was an African-American Jew. During the Olympics, all of a sudden, all the signs came down, all the signs of no Jews allowed. All the laws that were enacted were very, very quietly not enforced during that one period. And then right afterwards, again, they were enforced all over again. Now, what was the immediate cause of Kristallnacht? Okay, in November of 1938, November 7th, there was a 17-year-old Jewish man, Jewish boy, named Herschel Greenspan. He lived in Paris. He was kind of a wandering guy. He didn't have much going on. But one thing that upset him all the time, one thing that was on his mind all the time, was the fact that his parents had been deported from Germany, because Germany, one of the 400 laws they declared, was in October 1938, in October 1938, was that you could not, if you were a Polish citizen living in Germany, you had to leave. And yet the Poles wouldn't accept these Jews back in. So they were all stuck at the border, about 12,000 of them. And he was getting letters from his parents letting him know how horrible the situation was for all of them. This made him incredibly upset. He went to the German embassy in Paris. We don't know exactly what his intention was, but his intention probably was to assassinate the ambassador to France. It happens to be as he walked into the embassy, the ambassador walked out on his daily walk through Paris. Herschel Greenspan said, "I'm a spy, I have special information for you, I have documents to show you." And they led him into a room with someone who was not very high up in this mission. His name was Ernst von Braun, and he shot him. 2 days later, he died.
Wait.
So the Nazi official in Paris died at the hands of this 17-year-old Jew, a very isolated incident. This led to an excuse by the Germans to take things to the next level. Because all the laws that we've been talking about so far, of removing Jews from society, of declaring they can't be physicians, they can't be scientists, they can't be in the government, we have to take away things from them, never got physical. Really didn't get to that point on a mass scale until this night. This was the excuse. The fact that this low functionary, this dignitary in Paris had been killed by this one Jew, they said, okay, this is our opportunity, and on an organized scale, on a mass scale, over the course of November 9th and November 10th, they committed unbelievable acts of atrocities. First of all, there were about 276 shuls that were destroyed throughout Germany and Austria. Austria had been incorporated into Germany already. There were 7,500 shops and businesses that were destroyed and looted. It's called the Night of Broken Glass because everywhere you walk throughout Germany and Austria, there was glass all over the street from all the Jewish shops and stores that were destroyed. They also ransacked an untold number of apartments and homes and looted. Beyond that, they also took 30,000 men and sent them to concentration camps. Now, typically the men were there for somewhere in the range of 3 months and then brought back. But when you talk about how many people died on Kristallnacht, the official number is 91. That night, the SS, the SA, the hooligans, everyone around who was burning all these shuls, destroying all these shuls, killed 91 people, but the real number is in the thousands, between 2,000 and 3,000. Because people died in the concentration camps later. People committed suicide because of what had just happened. And so in terms of actual people killed, the number is higher than 91. But the 91 is the official figure of those who were killed. Here you see someone walking by, a German, with a tremendous hammer. He's just going Jewish store to Jewish store, knocking in the windows. This is from Berlin, I believe. The most thorough job that the Nazis did was in Berlin and Vienna. Virtually everything Jewish was destroyed in those two capital cities. Here you have a map that shows you, it's a bit hard to see and I apologize for that, it's easier here, all the places within the greater Germany now, including Austria, where these shuls were destroyed. And you can see it's pretty much everywhere. Okay, so what was the aftermath? What was the takeaway from all this? First of all, the Nazis made a lot of money. Because the next day, Hermann Göring, who was very high up in the Nazi hierarchy, eventually became the head of the Air Force, he said, you know what? We're not going to pay for this, all this damage. All these Jews are insured. We're taking their insurance money. Not only that, there's been all this damage done throughout Germany. We're not going to help the Jews rebuild any of it, rebuilding the shuls. What we're going to do is we're going to take from the Jews more money, 20% from each one of them, to get up to 1 billion Deutschmarks. It was a lot of money at that time. And so they basically made the Jews pay, to the extent that they could, repair all the damage that had been caused. Jews have been leaving Germany because of what was going on for a long time now, since 1933, in ebbs and flows. After Kristallnacht, a lot more wanted out. A lot more saw the writing on the wall. And they decided to leave. And this caused, if there were 523,000 Jews in Germany before Hitler came to power, there were probably only about 218,000 left by the time World War II started. Between 80 and 100,000 of those left in that very brief period between the end of Kristallnacht and the start of World War II. The other and probably most important thing that happened was the reaction of the world and how the Nazis perceived it. Because at first they were very worried, meaning it's one thing to enact a law saying you can't go to a pool, you can't be a doctor, you can't go to school with us. It's another thing to kill people, to destroy everything they own. And it was widely covered in the press. I mean, all the press was there, all the newspapers. They saw that the world basically did nothing. The US just sent its ambassador back for a little while and then returned him to Berlin. They also saw the reactions of the German people. The German people were not all sympathetic to the Nazis, but it was the very, very rare German who did anything to stop what was going on. And then they knew that going forward, they could pretty much do what they wanted with us. And that's why this night is so important. You're seeing a little bit of the coverage here. This is just I took from 2 random newspapers, but this was big news. It's big news that led to very little action. And Hitler saw that time and again when he took one step after another, that that's what would happen. And eventually the decision was made to destroy all of the Jews. Now, German Jewry suffered horribly. A lot of them did get out, but those that were left in Germany were eventually mostly deported east and killed along with the rest of the Jews once World War II started in September 1939. What I want to show you here very quickly is a couple scenes, and I'm going to go Mr. Bravmann up in about 30 seconds, from Mr. Bravmann's city, where he came from, Würzburg, Germany, which is between Hamburg and between Frankfurt and Nuremberg, pretty much, right above Bavaria, if you've ever been. This town, this city rather, in 1933 had 2,145 Jews who were 2% of the population. In 1933, Jews only made up less than 1% of the entire German population. And yet we were viewed as their #1 enemy. So here you see a picture of what was the great shul in Würzburg pre-war, before Kristallnacht. This was a picture I mentioned to you that right when Hitler came to power, he already started a boycott of Jewish shops. This was that first day in Würzburg of those look like SA soldiers, militia who are enforcing bans on Jewish businesses in the city. And here are those that remained behind, who were left in Würzburg between 1941 and 1943. During World War II, the Jews that remained in Würzburg, the Jews, as I said, the Jews that remained in Germany, were marked for destruction, just as the Jews were throughout all of the countries that were occupied by the Germans. This is just a footnote, and that is that Würzburg itself suffered an unbelievable blow. The city, in March 1945, just a few weeks before the end of the war, in 17 minutes, 225 British bombers flew overhead. And the city really had remained untouched beforehand, and they destroyed 90% of the city. Würzburg itself has been rebuilt like meticulously, but it's only been rebuilt in terms of bricks and mortar, because the Jews, the people who were the fabric of the life of the city, are no more. No more there. At this point, I want to invite our esteemed guest, Mr. Bravmann, to please come up. Mr. Bravmann, first of all, welcome.
Thank you. If I had known, I would have not worn a tie either.
If I would have known, I would have worn a tie. I would like to just take you back, Mr. Bravmann, because this is such an amazing opportunity for us. If you could tell us about your family history, how your family ended up in Würzburg.
Any students here were born in April of 2002. By the chance? I asked, are there any students here who were born in April of 2002 by the chance?
Good one there.
Okay, so that's how old I was on November 10th, 1938. Exactly your age. I was born in the middle of the month. So now you know how old I am anyway. So I was 13 years old. I did bar mitzvah in April of 1938. It's my family, a sister who was 4 years older than I was. That was the size of the family, immediate family. My mother, my father, Abraham Shalom, my sister and I. We lived in an apartment that was on the ground floor of a 4-story building. And to tell you briefly, if you haven't seen the video called Names Not Numbers, and I think many of you probably have. If you haven't, maybe you want to see it again. The night of Kristallnacht, I was woken up very early, a lot of noise outside my window. To give you a short background, I went to a school which was called it was a Volksschule that we studied Hebrew in the morning, like Bible, Chumash, Siddur, and other secular subjects in the afternoon. It was my habit at that time to go to shul every morning, since I had become a mitzvah. But I was a very sound sleeper. Normally I needed 3 alarm clocks to wake me up. That morning I didn't need any alarm clock. Around 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, it was still pitch black outside. I heard a lot of noise. Got up and I looked out the window and I saw a group of SS men around a lamppost. So I could see who they were. And I didn't pay much attention, actually, but I knew that I'd better stay home that morning and not go to shul. And around 7 or 8 o'clock that morning, they came to our door, they knocked on the door, and they said, we had of course opened the door, otherwise they would have smashed it in. And they told my father to get ready to leave, and they took him away from us to the jail in Würzburg, from where he was then deported the following day to Buchenwald, together with any men they could possibly find in town that day. My mother was a very strong woman, okay, and she really knew what to do. After my father left, they came back in and they smashed everything inside that looked like crystal or what shall I call it, anything that's made of porcelain. And the whole apartment was a big mess, from kitchen to living room, dining room, etc. And they left the apartment and left us alone. I took a short walk to the synagogue, which was probably a 10-minute walk or so. Normally I used to ride a bike, and I saw that the synagogue was destroyed, but not burned. There was no fire. And all the policemen and security and promotion, and I think some of the Sifrei Torah, if I remember correctly, were lying in the court lot. I was searching for my own towels, which I could not find. Then I returned home, and my mother decided that we couldn't stay in the apartment, so we took whatever we needed, and about 5 blocks away to the home of friends of my parents, whose apartment was not touched, and decided to live there over the weekend. This actually took place, I don't know why the Hebrew date is never mentioned, but the 16th of Peshkan. And that Shabbat, of course, I could not, it was on the Thursday. That Shabbat, of course, I could not go to shul, because the shul was destroyed. And so we stayed with his family, we were friends, and we ate what I call milchig treif, which is, they did not have a kosher home, and we just lived and ate things that we thought we could eat without violating our laws. My father was in Buchenwald for about 6 weeks, and when he returned, he was 55, and they let older people, 55 in those days was considered old. They let older people out first, and he never talked much about what happened in Buchenwald. The only thing he said, it was very difficult to observe the kosher laws, obviously. I, after this experience, my mother definitely decided that we had to get out of Germany. My father had been an optimist all his life, and my mother a pessimist. My father thought because he had served in the German army during World War I, he wouldn't be touched. But he was obviously, once he was in Buchenwald, he knew it was different, and my parents applied to go to America. They also had the foresight through some friends in Copenhagen. Many of you may know Rabbi Hamburger. He may have been in the school at one time. He also did a name and numbers video. His family was instrumental in bringing me to Sweden with the kinder transport, children transport. In Sweden I was in what is called a youth aliyah home in a little town, and I worked on a farm. Any studying that we did was done at home, was done in the home at night, and actually I sort of, after the first week or two, I sort of enjoyed being together with other children my age. The only time I really seriously missed my home and my parents and my sister was the first Friday night that I was away from home. Of course, if it wouldn't be for Hitler, I would give him credit for this, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't stand here. I would still be in Germany. God knows what I would be doing. I may not be living anymore at this age. Who knows? But through him, I got out. I went to the United States in 1941, November. I celebrated my 74th anniversary last week. On the 5th of November 1941 is when I arrived in America, which was just 4 weeks or months before Pearl Harbor. That's sort of the overview of what happened to me during this time.
Can I ask a couple quick questions, and then I'd love to open up for a few questions, and then we have a brief a cappella performance also. But you grew up under the Nazi regime before Kristallnacht, meaning how much anti-Semitism did you witness? How much was directed at you? What was life like during those years?
During those years, I mean, we were called dirty Jews, of course, and occasionally we had to fight with some other kids on the street. I don't remember if I ever got hurt or not, basically, obviously not badly, but we felt that we were really not wanted in this country anymore, in this city that we had left as we grew up. It was a very famous city in Germany. It was small, it had 100,000 inhabitants, 2,000 Jews, and it had a beautiful garden, a beautiful museum. It had what is called a residence, which is a castle where nobility lived. It also had the only Jewish seminary for teachers in Germany, which it was famous for, and the congregation that we had, the synagogue that we had and attended, was a synagogue for all Jews. It's very similar to maybe what SAR stands for. It was an open synagogue. Anybody was a member of the synagogue, and on the Shabbat morning, I remember distinctly that some of the people who were in the synagogue, after they left the synagogue, they went to either open the store or go to the store. Of course, the majority, I think, of the people who were there on Shabbat were observant. Me, my sister, and I made it a habit after shul to always walk to my grandmother, who never left her house, who lived in my grandmother on my father's side, who lived with my uncle, also about 10 blocks away from the synagogue, and we went there to be benched. I don't know if you know what that means. In other words, my grandmother blessed us every Shabbat, and we even observed this custom. My daughter Judy, when she is in shul, we daven after Musa, and we will go out. She will never leave the shul unless she's blessed by me. And so this habit became probably a very Yiddish habit, because the other people only bless their children on every Yom Kippur.
One last point, and that is that we are doubly blessed having Mr. Bravmann here today. Tomorrow is Veterans Day, and Mr. Bravmann very humbly did not go a little further in his story, that you joined the U.S. Army. Do you want to tell us just a little bit about what that was?
I can tell you a little bit about it. I was 16 and a half when I came here. At 18 and a half, I was in October of 43, I was drafted to the Army, and I went into the Army. I've always made it a habit to try to make the best of everything in life. I find it very helpful. I went to the Army. I was at Fort Dix, which is in New Jersey first, then I was in Alabama for basic training. I became a citizen after having been in the country only for 2.5 years or so in Anniston, Alabama. I don't know if any of you know it, but Anniston is the capital of Alabama. From there, I went to Camp Swift, Texas. In Swift, Texas, I applied to go into the ski troops, which we needed 2 or 3 references for. I was lucky to get into the ski troops, and one of the reasons I wanted to get into the ski troops is, of course, I learned how to ski in Sweden. One of the reasons was I knew that skiing in those days was only done by people who were in college. It was a very small sport, but you wouldn't find an ordinary American ski. Today it's a big sport, of course. And I figured I want to be together with some people that, have some intelligence. And my English became pretty good, except I could never lose the accent, as you can well tell. And from there I went with it to Camp Hill, Colorado, where I trained with the ski troops. I was marching, and I don't know how we did it, 15 miles with 90 pounds on my back. And it was just, I can't imagine how we do this. And I went overseas to Italy. I was involved in the war. I was there again. I made the best of it. I was lucky. Even though I was in the foxhole with other soldiers, I didn't get scratched, but some of the others even didn't make it out. And from there, we had a Seder in Milan, Italy, which had about 5,000 soldiers attending, and I met a chaplain, and the chaplain took a liking to me, and he took me out of my unit before the unit went over to Asia. So I became a chaplain's assistant. And in April of 1945, came home, left the army, and the rest is history.
If you don't mind, would you mind taking a few questions
Of
from
course,
the children?
anyone would like to ask. Yes.
What kept you strong through all this? What kept you strong through all of this? Strong through all this. How were you able to?
What kept you strong through all this?
I really don't know. Just it was my nature stayed strong. I think many of you who would experience this would also be strong. You know, it makes you grow up much faster when you have such an experience. And as I said, if you make the best of it, it's I think what makes you basically strong. And if you believe in God, that
Yep.
also helps.
Over here we have.
Yeah.
Let's stand up.
Did you experience any anti-Semitism before 1933?
Before 1933, did you experience anti-Semitism? Well, you were very
In
young.
1933, I was very young. I was only 8 years old. I don't think that I really experienced anything. I mean, my father was traveling a lot. He was selling cigars. My mother was running the cigar store. And, you know, we really lived, I would say, more or less normal life.
What did your parents do? What did your parents do?
My father sold cigars. Okay. He was traveling a lot. He was away from home and quite a lot. He was selling cigars all over Germany for a factory that was owned, by the way, by Jews. And my mother actually also had a store, a cigar store. Okay. And my mother actually was running the stores. We had somebody taking care of the children. Us. Yes.
You're really loud.
I've never been to that place where you were all those kids your age. Did you ever see your parents again?
Speak a little bit.
She asked, after in Sweden,
Yeah.
what was it like reuniting with your parents? How did that happen?
I arrived on the 5th of November, as I said. It was a very warm day, like we had a few days ago. And I found it very exciting to be back with my parents and to move to Washington Heights. Living, I don't know if you know Washington Heights, the first apartment we were in was 820 West 108th Street in Washington Heights. And I was looking to do some work, and through a friend of mine found a job learning to be a silversmith, I believe. And I went to George Washington High School at night for about a year and a half. And that's when I went to the army. When I came back from the army, I went back to the school and I took the Regents, which I somehow passed. And went back to my job as a silversmith. In 1952, then the stock exchange decided to close on Shabbat, having a very interest in finance, government finance. I applied for a job at a firm called Bravmann and Company, which was founded by someone who came from Würzburg, Hans Oppenheimer. And believe it or not, I'm still working for the same firm today, full time.
We'll take one more question, if that's
Sure.
okay. I know you have a very busy schedule.
Was your mother's store one of the ones that got like smashed?
Yes, it's store that.
Whether I'm sorry, Mr. Bravmann, I just so they hear. The question was whether your own parents' store was one of the ones that was smashed.
My parents' store was smashed. That was the rest of it you really can see on that I talked about on the video when you see the video. The rest of the story. And by the way, this names not numbers. One thing you should know. The reason it was called names not numbers, which we don't live up to anymore today, was because it was mainly started for people who were in Germany or Austria during this period and didn't go to a concentration camp, fortunately. Okay. That's why it's called midsummer. But there are not that many people around anymore, particularly around the schools. So that take other people and let them talk about the Shoah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Bravmann. Please have a seat.
Acheinu kol Beit Yisrael, Acheinu kol Beit Yisrael, Hanituni batzara, batzara ubashivya, haomdim bein bayam ubein bayabasha. Acheinu kol Beit Yisrael, Acheinu kol Beit Yisrael, Hanituni batzara, batzara ubashivya, haomdim bein bayam ubein bayabasha. Makom yerachem aleichem b'yatzara, lirvacha u'mefer la'leora u'yishivu lege'ula b'zman kariv. Hamakom yerachem aleihem yotziim mitzara, lirvacha u'mefer la'leora u'yishivu lege'ula hashta b'gala u'bizman kariv.
Hashta bagala uvizman kari.
Okay, so thank you very much. I want to take this opportunity to really give our hakarat tov to Mr. Bravmann, Mrs. Bravmann, Mr. Sal, and the team. Mr. Bravmann is a very busy man, and he took his time out of the schedule. We have so much to be thankful for him, to him. First of all, for speaking to us. Second of all, for this. And it is truly an honor and a privilege. Thank you so much, sir. We are going to